Hey guys, welcome to the Zapata brand boxing podcast brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast and you too can get 40% off selected brands. Well, guys, welcome to another edition of Boxing and Bagels here on the Zapata brand podcast. And it is Father's Day. So, first off, happy Father's Day to my two guests, Percy Crawford in the middle, and everybody knows King Mo towards the end. Thanks for joining us on the show today, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Happy Father's Day, fellas.
Happy Father's Day, y'all.
Yes, finally we get a day for ourselves, and I'm working today. You guys are not, and that's good. I'm working still. But either way, we had a big fight last night, and I brought you guys on because I wanted to hear from you guys especially as to what we thought and what we can look forward to in the future here. Let me start with Percy first. Percy, we talked a little bit before the fight and kind of how you anticipated this fight going.
Yep, I thought Frank Martin would look good in spots. I thought he would win some early rounds because that's kind of what Tank has become. Just a guy that, I don't know if he's figuring you out. I think it kind of stems from him not letting his hands go as much as he used to. And he gives up rounds that way. But he believes in his power, and it prevailed last night.
Oh, it was a vicious knockout, to say the least. King Mo, now you've been around the Mayweather boxing gym for a while. Did you know Tank as he was coming through?
I seen him, but I didn't talk to him. Like, he was just another young kid that I didn't really know what to expect. I heard he had some power and stuff like that, but he was so young. I was worried about my own career and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you think of the fight last night?
I think that Frank Martin did a great job when he was in the middle of the ring. I think he started getting complacent and he started getting worried. And you can see that he started getting worried about the counters. And that was very apparent when he was on the ropes. There are a few times where he kept his guard up too high where the body shots were open. And I think that's what led to his downfall.
Go ahead.
The uppercut that hit him kind of looked like it was a body shot at first. He came low and he came up underneath, and that stunned him, and then he got hit with the straight left. And I think he showed him too much respect at some times. I think that with him being a former wrestler, he could have utilized his clinch game a little more to frustrate Tank like Rolly Romero did.
Oh, here's the one thing I noticed from both of you guys that you said. There wasn't wow, they are really pushing Tank to be the face. And after the fight, you could see they really pushed his Amazon Prime, really pushed him to the forefront. He thanked everybody and did whatever. But what I see out of both you guys' expressions, and I'll ask Percy first, and then we'll go to Mo. Do you really think this is who he is? Is he the guy, or does he still have something to prove? Because what I didn't get is you guys jumping out saying, "This guy, man, this guy's the guy." Whether power or not, this guy is the guy in the division.
I think Tank brings what most casual fans can grab onto, and that's knockouts. You're not going to sell a whole lot of casual fans on a guy that's constantly going to the decision. So in terms of him potentially being the face of boxing, or even right now being the face of boxing, I could understand why, because he flatlines people. In terms of what I like to see and what I'm looking for from Tank, he definitely has a little more to prove, because to me, he hasn't had that moment where he did something I didn't expect yet. I think him knocking out Frank Martin, I kind of expected that. He's kind of doing what he's supposed to do to these guys. There's a few guys out there who he can beat, and he doesn't even have to knock them out to me. He can beat them, and he can kind of up himself a tier. Is he the face of boxing in the sense of what that means, I guess, on the surface? Probably so, because he brings eyes, he put butts in seats, and he knocks people out. But in terms of my diehard boxing mind tells me there's a few guys that's resume is a little bit better. They're a little bit busier, and they don't give up as much as Tank. Hell, I know a lot of people bash Shakur because he's boring, but if we're being honest, Shakur probably has lost 5 rounds as a pro, maybe, in 20-plus fights. So that's a guy that, to me, it's a lot harder to outbox someone for 36 minutes than to knock him out. And not taking away from Tank's knockouts, because they're spectacular, and I love to watch them. But I just think when you're talking about the overall picture of body of work, it's a guy who barely loses rounds. And I'll be honest, Tank probably loses more than he wins. He just have the great equalizer.
Right. Mo, you're back to you on that one, that point.
As far as the face of boxing is concerned, that changes on whoever gets the knockout most recent. Because let's say Crawford knocks out Madrimov, he's the face of boxing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like tag, you're it. You get a knockout, you're the face. I get a knockout, I'm the face. I think Tank's very exciting, but I've yet to see him face all styles.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to see him face a slick mover like Tevin Farmer, and that makes sense why they never fought.
Right.
He didn't fight Lomachenko when they asked for that about 7 years ago. Because he said he was too young. Shakur Stevenson, I think, beats him. I think Shakur Stevenson is the best fighter from 140 and down until you see Inoue. You know, so I think Shakur beats him because I think Shakur has more tricks in the bag. I feel like he has more ways to win in a sense because people say he has pillow hands, a pillow fist, but he still can hit hard enough to make you respect his power, like Floyd. He's tricky. He has great movement. He can hold his ground. He can clinch. He has more facets to his game than the Tank. And if he's up, if he wins that many rounds on Tank, it's a wrap. He's gonna just cruise to a victory.
So you think he has enough? Because this was the one concern I had with Frank Martin, and it kind of showed. Does he have enough, Shakur Stevenson I'm speaking of, to keep Tank off of him? Because I think at some point Tank's going to say, I got to put it in gear and go get him. Does he have enough to put him to take it off him?
I think so. Go watch the sparring with Ugas. I watch that every month in amazement. It's on YouTube. When he sparred Ugas, he was touching Ugas up, hitting him with some stuff. He hurt Paro, and the people asleep on that fight because we were all busy watching the pay-per-view. He beat Matias, you know. And look, there's a few names: Matias, Williams, Zapata. There are a few names out there that people don't want to face. And Paro went from Australia to Puerto Rico to get that victory. And guess who he was sparring with for most of his camp? From what I understand, he was sparring with Shakur. You know, so I mean, Shakur's that dude.
Yeah, it comes down to Shakur or Tank at this point. But here we are again, two fights that should be made. They're not going to. It's going to be a while before they get made. I think Tank is definitely going to get the fight with Lomachenko next. Which, if you notice, anytime they want to fight, the promoters will really push that towards the end of a fight, make him be bigger than he is, and they do it, which is their job at the time. But is Lomachenko a guy who can propel Tank to the next level? Because Lomachenko's small, and still, like you said, King, who's Tank really fought? And not to knock Frank Martin. Frank Martin's Frank Martin. He's not one of the other big guys that is fighting. So I'm going to throw this question to you, Percy. If he fights Lomachenko next and beats him, that still makes him, it's still further away from him beating someone of a Shakur Stevenson. Even if he were to fight someone, a Lomachenko, and beat the brakes off of him, still, he's not moving forward. It's a side, like we said, it's a sideways move. It's not going up to take one of those guys or basically take a risk, similar to like what Floyd did.
Yeah, I think beating Lomo at this stage in his career will be somewhat of a lateral move. It would be a good name on the resume. And I think it depends. With Tank right now, I think it depends on how he does it. That's what Tank's whole career is kind of centered on now, right now. If you think about, people wasn't down on Gervonta Davis until he went the distance with Isaac Cruz, who was a short notice guy, and people looked at him as the shortest fighter Tank had ever faced. Tank was finally the taller fighter. And it just didn't look right to people because it's like, how did this little dude come in on 2.5, 3 weeks notice and go the distance with Tank? Now, we know Isaac Cruz is something to deal with, but to the average fan who clamors for Tank, it looked weird. And then he came back and he knocked a few guys out and he was right back to where they put him. So I think with Tank, if he has a lackluster decision win over Lomachenko, it could hurt him more than it can help him. If he does the Lomachenko like he's done to so many others, I don't think it moves him on the needle scale in terms of the fans because people love Gervonta Davis because he flatlines people. Nothing more, nothing less. He doesn't talk a whole lot. He's starting to talk a little more, but he doesn't talk a whole lot. He doesn't really have a whole lot of flair. He knocks people out, and that's what people respect. If you notice, that's why all the celebrities are talking about Tank, and it's like he knocks guys out. So if he can knock Lomo out impressively, I don't think it changes much. If a 36, 37-year-old Lomo can somehow go the distance and even make it close, split decision or something like that, I think people start looking at Tank's side out a little bit.
Same to you, King Mo.
Honestly, I think that he's expected to beat Lomachenko. Take a risk. You know, why don't you go up to 140? He went to 140 before and fought Barrios. Go up to 140 and fight Zapata. That's a name that, you know.
Ooh, I don't know if you want to do that.
I know, but at the same time, like, go up. You know, you like when you're chasing greatness, you do that. Now, Oya Inoue did. Same thing with Terrence Crawford. So when you're chasing greatness, you put yourself at the risk to get defeated by people that are bigger and possibly more skilled. So I mean, I would love to see the Lomachenko fight, but at the same time, that fight was better about 6-7 years ago. Now, with that being said, go to 140, fight Teofimo. You know, fight one of these young lions at upper weight class above you, because a lot of these guys have the same experience as Tank. You know, and I like to see him fight someone that's with the same experience as him, maybe a little bigger because he carries that punch. I don't see anybody at 135 besides Shakur Stevenson that's really going to do anything. Wait, Barinchik, is Barinchik still there? The Ukrainian? Is he at 135 or is it 140?
I think he might have moved up.
Moved to 140, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, like 140 is like right now, 140 is the hot spot. 135, you know, is cool. 140 is where all the big names are at.
But I will say this: one thing that's kind of glaring to me about Tank is he's starting to weigh in lighter and lighter.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to think 140 is getting even more distant. He was 133 and a half Friday. That's super light for a guy coming off a 14-month layoff. So I don't know if he's maybe hinting at taking something at 30 or just he's settled in at 35 so he can weigh in lighter. But I found that interesting that he's starting to weigh in lighter and lighter for these fights.
I mean, he looks good. He looks good.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm going to push back a little bit on you, King Mo, for a second. You said when you want to try to chase greatness, okay? In your career, you always wanted that challenge. You have the wrestling mentality. That's a different mentality too. When you're that level wrestler too, it's a different mentality. Is he really trying to chase greatness? Think about it. Because he'd rather maybe get the bag and go to a sideways move and now fight a Lomachenko, or instead of T.O. is there for him. T.O. will go down. He will go down to fight him. Isaac Cruz is begging to fight him again. Garcia's begging to fight him again. That's a money grab there. But is he really legit? Can you sit there and say he wants to fight the best of the best? Everybody says they do, but what his actions are a little different.
Well, when you start saying you're the best and you start labeling yourself the hot topic and you get the hot, you know, the man on the block, the new man on the block, usually when I hear that, I'm thinking someone that's trying to accomplish great things. You know, someone that's willing to take a risk, but at the same time, to what you pointed out, he's about the money, and maybe once in a while when you get the money, you're willing to take that risk after you secured the bag. You know, I think that he secured the bag to the point where he can actually take the risk. A loss on your record is not a bad thing. A loss on your record means you've attempted to achieve something that, you know, Sugar Ray Robinson, once you secure enough money and you're set, take a risk. Go out there, you know, accept new challenges, because that's what sports, combat sports is about. Going out there and trying to conquer the unconquerable. You know, you want to go out there and try to be great. You know, everyone's done it. Bernard Hopkins tried it with his age. George Foreman tried it with his age. Ali did it. You can name everyone that's done it. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, you know, Terrence Crawford, Naoya Inoue. I'm okay with you taking a loss as long as you're trying your best to do something that's never been done.
I think that would stamp his legacy if he did. Everyone has to jump up. You know, I can remember back when De La Hoya was fighting, and I always was like, why does he keep moving up? He's dominant at 30. Look, don't move up. Then he go to 35 and he'd win. Then 39 he'd win. Then it wasn't until he got to the 160 mark where he started getting beat up when he fought 154 and then Hopkins stopped him. So I've always been, okay, you can be great, but try to be even better, which brings me to our co-main event. David Benavidez taking on Gvozdyk. You talk about someone who wants to be great. David Benavidez is up for the challenge. Take that in contrast to Canelo Alvarez. Here's a guy who has the bag, and he's like, no, you got to do more. If David Benavidez didn't look good yesterday, it would have given Canelo an excuse to say, this guy isn't good enough. You can't fight this guy. Now he did look good, and he dominated him, and he can get to 68. So, Percy, let me go to you. How did this improve Benavidez's chance of getting the big fight with Canelo?
I thought it was a good performance, not great performance. I just don't think Canelo's interested, man. I don't know if there's anything Benavidez can do to make Canelo interested in fighting him. And I think he's pretty much proved that. You know, Canelo isn't hiding the fact that he doesn't want to fight David Benavidez for whatever reason. I would never say Canelo's afraid of him or anything like that. I don't know what the reason is, but it's something about this guy. He just doesn't want to participate with it. And I don't know if Benavidez can up his stock, lower his stock in the eyes of Canelo. So I think David Benavidez, and we discussed this the last episode, George, is he's going about it the right way. Do I want Canelo? Absolutely. But will I go back down to 68 and win a title? Yep. Do I want the Bivol better be winner? Yep. He's one of the guys that I don't see waiting around for one fight, and I've seen that happen before. And I remember when Errol Spence was waiting to fight Kell Brook, and I think Brook moved up to 60 and fought Golovkin, and then Brook had the eye surgery. Errol Spence told me I'll never wait on another fighter again. And I think more fighters need to take that approach because David Benavidez seems to have it right. I don't know if there's anything he can do to encourage Canelo to fight him. So just keep moving on. Keep plugging along.
Mo, what do you think?
I agree. But I think that 175 might be a bridge too far.
For who? Benavidez or Canelo?
Benavidez, yeah. I don't
really?
Yeah, I think you know, he was talking about cruiserweight. Stay away from, don't go to cruiserweight because Jai Opetaia would murder him. You know, he's too mobile and hits too hard. He's too big. I think Benavidez might be a problem for him. I can see him giving Bivol issues, but at the same time, I'm not sure if he can hurt Bivol. You know, and as you saw how I've never seen Benavidez look gassed like that. I've never seen him look marked up like that. And he the last 4 rounds, I thought he lost them. You know, they're competitive, but I think it was a toss-up. But at the same time, looking at his face and looking at his reaction to the punches and seeing the redness on his face, you know, I think that maybe, you know, I think that he should, you know, 175 is good, but maybe, you know, I don't know if he should wait till Benavidez retires or something, man. You know, but chasing greatness, you know, go ahead and take that risk. But man, Benavidez is a different animal. That's like fighting a Matias, maybe.
It's funny you said that because before we got on, me and Percy were talking and we said Benavidez got marked up. He got hit a lot, which could open up the potential of Canelo saying, you know, he does get hit a lot. And I talked to Ronald Ellis, who had sparred them both. And he said, Canelo hits way harder than anybody, and even Benavidez, that he's ever sparred with. And that's with 16-ounce gloves. If he's getting marked up against, I'm not saying Gvozdyk was bad, but he's 38 years old. Not been so active. I think you're right, Mo, thinking it might be a little bit too far for him to go to the upper echelon in cruiserweight, 75 possibly, but 68 is where he wants because he wants the undisputed championship. Benavidez wants that undisputed championship. If Canelo's holding all the belts, he can't do anything with it because he's not going to give him the fight. Do you see a way, of any way possible, that Turki Al-Sheikh can get this fight done in Saudi Arabia?
I think so, but I think that Terrence Crawford might get a shot before Benavidez if that would happen.
Percy, you think that's a shot there?
Yeah, I think I would lean towards Canelo probably accepting the Bud fight over the Benavidez fight. I just don't get any vibes from Canelo. First and foremost, Canelo's not hurting for money, so I don't even know if Turki can do anything to influence Canelo to accept the fight based on a dollar sign. So if I remove money, I got to go to one. I just don't see the one. I don't see the initiative. I don't see let him win 2 fights at this weight and then I'll potentially. Canelo doesn't even play that game. It just seems like there's no interest in fighting David Benavidez. And to me, when you ask for $200-300 million, you're very blatantly telling us you don't want that fight, because that's not even realistic. You wouldn't even make that money back. Is it a fight boxing fans want to see? Yes. Is it going to sell so many pay-per-views that you can pay one guy $200 million? No, and Canelo knows that.
So we were talking about daring to be great. Canelo, I feel, has fought everybody he had to fight, but is there the one guy other than Triple G? Because Triple G kind of fell off. He kind of fell off after, so whatever he did in that first part of his career, that's it. He really fell off. I don't even think he's fighting anymore. Who else has Canelo really fought to say this guy? I mean, he has the backing of Mexico. The one guy that he fought that was on a high level, Floyd Mayweather, he lost. Second, he goes up to fight B. Well, he loses. Triple G, arguably, he could have lost 2 of the 3. Has he done enough to say this guy is, I mean, obviously a Hall of Famer, but was he as great, or was he pushed a little bit further than they thought he was? You know what I mean? Like, was he a little over what they thought he was, considering he doesn't want to fight?
No, Canelo's that guy to me, man. Canelo one punch knocked out Carlos Baldomir when he was 19 years old. He has 4, let's see, Miguel Cotto, Floyd Mayweather, Triple G, Shane Mosley. I just named 4 Hall of Famers on his resume, and he beat all but one of them. Mm-hmm. And there's a few guys like Kovalev who may sneak into the Hall of Fame at some point. I think Canelo's that guy, and I honestly think Canelo's at a point in his career, much like when Floyd Mayweather was towards the end, and you remember Andre Berto was his swan song, and people was like, well, there's Errol Spence out there, and there's Keith Thurman. Floyd wasn't touching none of them young guys, man. He hadn't accomplished enough to where he can go out on his own terms. I've been saying for a while now, I think this is Canelo's. If 24 is not his last year in boxing, I think 25 is. And I think he's kind of earned the right to kind of do what he wants to do. Hell, even Jermell Charlo at some point might get in the Hall of Fame. So that's 6 guys, 4 already in and 2 potential.
Charlo? Jeez, in the Hall of Fame?
You'd be amazed 10, 15 years from now when we kind of searching for names, who's going to get put up for Hall of Fame.
It's funny you say that. I was just at the Hall of Fame this weekend at the induction, and I was going through that list, and I'm like, how the hell did he get in? I mean, look, I love Arturo Gatti. Everybody loves. He's not a Hall of Fame fighter. There's no way he should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a couple other guys. I don't want to mention them because I know them. I'm like, I don't know if this guy should be in, but when I see him, hey, it's Hall of Fame or so-and-so. But
think 15 years from now when we're getting a Hall of Fame consideration and you're really grasping at straws. I mean, you got to think guys like Donald Curry still in the Hall of Fame. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad is in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So if they've been sleeping on those guys, 15 years from now, Jermell Charlo, undisputed 54-pound guy, Canelo legit has at least 5 potential or already Hall of Famers on his resume. That's impressive.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like Coco Beware. He's in the WWF Hall of Fame. Kind of like that level. It's like, this guy's in the Hall of Fame. So you kind of gotta, you kind of sneak it when you're reaching for straws, when you're grabbing for people. You're like, oh boy, I got to put somebody in. The only reason why Charlo, I thought, because he just stopped. He just was out so inactive towards the end there. It's like. Yeah, but if they put him in 15 years down the road, you might be right that they're grasping for anybody. But King Mo, what do you think about that? Was he overrated a little bit, or just because he won't take the fight with Benavidez?
Well, I think he's rated just right, but I think what's hurting him is the fact that he will not fight Benavidez, because he fought Austin Trout, he fought Lara, he fought guys that people were Angulo, granted, Angulo was a tough guy. James Kirkland was shot by them, but he's still a tough name. He fought everyone you could possibly fight at the time. But now, we're in a moment of what have you done for me lately? We see this young cat smashing everybody. He's undefeated. He's a former champion at the same weight class as you. And you're saying you won't fight Mexicans, but then you fight Jaime Munguia.
Yeah.
And even though, granted, Benavidez is part Mexican, he's half Mexican, but you know, he's done everything he could possibly do to get the fight. You know, and I think the fact that he's denied him that opportunity is what's making people think twice about who he is as a fighter.
Well, there's an interesting topic that came up as we transferred to something else here this week, and I brought him up before. Turkey Al-Sheikh was talking about buying all the promotions to make one. Mo, you actually might be someone who could give us a good insight on this. You see how UFC is run, Bellator is run. You have one guy, they put everyone in one league, and they fight each other. Would that ever work, do you think, in boxing? Give me your opinion on that.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Let's think about this, right? If they like you, they'll maneuver you the right way to make you the champ, like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is a legit fighter, but he didn't fight any wrestlers until he fought a wrestler on short notice, Chad Mendez. The girl from China, I forgot her name. She fought 5 times in a year and a half and got the belt. Habib had to fight through so many fights to get a title shot. Then also, the problem with MMA is that MMA is about the organization. It's not about the fighter. You know, once a fighter leaves the UFC, no one follows them. You know, I feel like boxing could do something a little different. Maybe get less belts, or maybe have have four sanctioning bodies. Keep it that way, but make sure get rid of the super. No, they have like super international, regular. I'll get rid of all that. Right. Get rid of all that. Maybe have some circuit belts so you can work your way up, but just get rid of all the nonsense titles behind the titles. You know, but I think that boxing is doing the right thing because with boxing, it's about the boxer, not about the promotion, not about who's the matchmakers. In MMA, it's the opposite. The most powerful name in MMA is not a fighter per se. It's Dana White. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's different with boxing. In boxing, people don't care about the matchmakers, the promoters. They care about the fighters. That's why the fight last night sold so much because people went there to see Tank. No one went there to see the promoter. They cared to see Tank fight and win by knockout. And I feel like that's the thing. Combat sports. That's the best thing about boxing per se. That the fighters, are in the forefront. It's opposite in MMA. In MMA, the promotion is at the forefront.
Percy, what do you think?
That's a great point because I think of a guy like Demetrius Johnson. When he was in the UFC, he was all world. He left the UFC and you didn't even hear much about him. I mean, they showed him at the fights last night, and I think everybody in my house was like, "Who is that?" Because you know, you kind of once you're out of the UFC, fans forget about you. As opposed to just say, for instance, Shakur fights July 6th, and that's his last fight for Top Rank. No one's gonna care that he left Top Rank. They just want to know when he's fighting again. You know, this whole Mayweather Tank mess. No one cares. They just want to know when Tank's fighting again. So I think that's a great point. I'm not for monopolies. I think once you give one person that kind of power, like Mo said, they can do what they want. If you piss them off, they can push you to the back of the line. If you're the company guy or the face or the baby face or the heel or however they're trying to promote you, they can push you to the front of the line. And yeah, some people are going to be rewarded for that kind of mentality, but a lot of people is going to suffer. And you got to think, if you have one guy, I remember when Al Heyman was building his stable and people were saying, how can one guy keep 60 fighters happy? Imagine if Turkey gets 260 fighters. There's only so many cards you can put on in a year. How are you going to spread that out? And I don't know. I don't know how you make that work. I don't know how you put, 80 fights, 80 fight cards, 50 fight cards on the zone in a calendar year.
Well, my bad. To piggyback off what Percy said, okay, Michael Hunter, Ivan Dishko. There's some heavyweight fighters out there that can't get fights, and they can't get in because they're not in with Turkey Al-Sheikh. Where if they were, they'd be fighting. Ivan Dishko was legit. I think he's 12-0. He ain't fought in like 3 or 4 years because he can't get fights. Michael Hunter had that same problem where Michael Hunter could be fighting on those cards, but he's not because he's not in with that crowd.
Who's he signed with?
Don King.
You know? Oh, well, see, Don King, I think's on his way. Yeah, he gotta let some of these guys go. I mean, I think Don's just about done there. See, that's another issue. You have these guys tied into contracts. If they're not putting on shows because it's costing them money, let alone the streaming, that's a whole nother disaster. But let me ask you guys this. Okay. So why wouldn't they run this like a business, but have them all work together where they do? I know they try to, because back in the 90s, King worked with Aram worked with Duvas. It was as good as you can get. That's what it was going to be, because they had the fights because they knew they were going to make the money. How do you convince the promoters and the fighters for taking the risk, promoters for saying, because obviously they made the gate was big yesterday. It was a big gate. How did they get them to put them together? Whether they have a guy who has an outside, doesn't have a skin in the game as far as losing money, ranking people, or doing whatever. How do they get a guy to start picking them off? There has to be some sort of structure, because then you're going to keep getting this. Because literally, Percy, you can walk across the street right here in Philadelphia and apply for a promoter's license, and you're a promoter for $50. There has to be some sort of structure. So you're telling me the professional in game is walking across the street and paying $50. You know what I mean? So yes, Turkey Al-Sheikh, I think I never thought of that point that you guys just brought up, that, hey, you have one guy controlling it, similar to what UFC does. But there has to be some structure, or we won't get that. And it's slowly but surely, maybe people want the UFC structure, but in boxing, in a way that you can that way you can put guys in certain spots, because you have to somehow break it up. You have to somehow, but where do you go from there? Because you're not going to get these fights.
I think you want it until you get it, and then you don't want it anymore. I think that's what happened in boxing, because I mean, you look at a guy like Francis Ngannou. He's the heavyweight champion. The minute that guy said a peep about more money, Dana was like, you can go. This guy comes to boxing, and then 2 fights make more money in boxing than he had a whole career in the UFC. So do I want fighters to get treated like that? Do I want fighters, a promoter, to be able to tell a fighter to go, screw himself? I don't want that in boxing. And I think, the Arams and the Kings in the 90s worked together, but you got to think in the 70s they didn't. So I think over time, you got to think Arams 90, Kings 92, there's going to be a new wave of promoters come in, whether it be Todd DeBow take over at Top Rank, or maybe Carl King takes over for Dine, and so forth and so on. Oscar eventually will get old. And I think the new wave of guys will come in with more innovative ideas. But boxing has been boxing since the beginning of the time, and I think it's a sport that won't change. And as much as the fans think they want it, they would have just as much to complain about. They would just only avert all that complaints to one person, as opposed to, oh, it's Aaron's fault, it's Al's fault. Now you can say it's Turkey's fault for everything. And I think that would make Turkey buy out of the game sooner than later.
I disagree, Percy.
What y'all
forgetting 5 versus 5, the Queensberry versus Matchroom.
Yeah.
Now listen, they should do more of that, because that was amazing. Listen, that card was good. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't mind seeing a Top Rank versus Queensberry, Top Rank versus PBC, Golden Boy. Do the dual meets. And with the dual meets, have their best fighters, like try to match them up. And then once in a while, have like an all-star match where they get the top 5 fighters, like Turkey Al-Sheikh's doing with the Riyadh season. But have an all-star duel where you get the who's who, the top 2 fighters from each promotion meet up. But then at the same time, it's like amateur wrestling, dual meets.
But here's my thing with that, Mo. I agree. I love the 5 versus 5. I love the tournament. I saw Oscar trying to get Bob Arum to kind of commit to doing something like that. But if we're talking about Turkey buying everything, and Turkey's the guy saying, well, these are the 5 from, let's say, the left, and these are the 5 from the right. You still have one person controlling, as opposed to Eddie Hearn saying, here's my top 5. Frank Warren, who is your top 5?
Yeah, I mean, keep it like that. But
I just don't want one guy.
I agree with you. Not one guy, but I mean, I agree with you on that. Not one guy, but at the same time, if anything.
I love that idea.
He can play, all right, y'all, I'm going to have a dual meet. The top 2, or whoever's the top 3 or top 4, we're going to fight it out.
Well, okay. So now this actually makes sense now, because now it's almost like NFL, Major League Baseball, okay? Because now you have the promoter being like the general manager, he's got to go out and pick the right, they draft the right players or what have you. They're going to draft some guys, put them in there, and then give them a cut of the money. They all get paid, and because that's what they're forget the money. But then they strategically put their guys in. That is a great system. It's like wrestling, WrestleMania, AWA, WWF. That would have been great. How big? Now, what happened was McMahon went and started picking guys off, which is what I thought Turkey Al-Sheikh would do, as opposed to buying them all. Pick off the ones he wants, because they're not going to govern it over there. They're going to put whoever they want, right?
I think Dewey Cooper's Team Combat League has a great structure. I love the structure he has. He doesn't have the name. They don't have the backing yet, and I don't know how it's going over there. But I love the team concept. I love Houston versus this person, and you kind of get fans to buy into their city or buy into their state. I love that concept. I don't know how far he can go with it, but if some big guys get behind that kind of team concept, and I'm not trying to make boxing turn into like this team sport. It's just a way to get guys to fight one another. I think that's the whole structure of what we're trying to bring together. I think that's a great concept. And, that's one of the things Dewey Cooper always said, you can't avoid in this, because this guy wins by, say, knockout. He gives his team X amount of points. So now y'all got to fight. I think it just eliminates the whole ducking. People like to say the word ducking. It eliminates that.
But do you put the governing bodies involved? Then you got the government involved, or the state. The state would be involved. Then you got a whole nother layer that you got to deal with there.
Oh, it's multifaceted, and it's something that can come together overnight, in my opinion. Because honestly, you would even have to look at the sanctioning bodies and say, do we reward trophies? Do we reward this, or do we want to keep WBC, WBA in a team structure? That's something you would have to look at. It's a layered issue, if you want to call it that, but it's solvable. It's solvable and it's doable. I just think it takes time. And I think we're starting to see more and more. I love Bob Arum coming out saying, man, me and Al been talking, to make Tank versus Lomo. Obviously, like Mo said, it's probably 5-6 years too late, but you got to crawl before you walk. At least we get into the stages of there's no barriers being placed. It's not Bob taking shots at Al, and they're talking. So that's the first step.
Well, and again, you could lead to the other minor details that they have to figure out the pay-per-view thing, because there's way too much piracy, and they're not going to put the fights on if they're losing money. If there's got to be some. There's always a step ahead. The best at it, I'll tell you, the best at it is at it. Top Rank. Top Rank's good. They will shut your stuff down quick. If you're trying to steal that shit, bang, it'll come up. And not that I've done it before, but I like, if you have a clip of theirs that you're putting on your channel, bang, it gets flagged in a second. So they're the best at it. So they have the technology at it somewhere. They have somewhere.
Got to somehow get networks back into. I know people love streaming, and I know that's the new evolutionized way of watching things, but we got to get some kind of net. I actually think Team Combat League would benefit 1,000,000% if they got like a Spike TV, what Dana White did with Tough, a Spike TV, a network. Spike isn't anymore, but a network behind them, because just depending on people to pay $7.99 for, I think he said $7.99 per show, or $29.99 for the whole season of Team Combat League. It's so tough to get people to commit to watching things like that on their phone, or doing any kind of streaming. We got to get networks back into boxing.
It's funny you said that, because I just got the alert yesterday, right before the pay-per-view went on, that Team Combat League's going live, because a friend of mine fights in Team Combat League, Brandon Glanton, and I bought it for the year. It supports him through his link, so I get it. I'm like, when I didn't even hear he's fighting. So again, there's so much technology out there. I look at I'm a bagel shop. I own a bagel shop, and there's so much technology that's less and less and less stuff out of my hand to do. So it's easier. Like the people will order online. The stuff's made for them. They take it and they go. There's no interaction, but I still get paid the same. So how do you factor that into boxing? I don't know.
I got an idea. So I think that they should do a dual meet format, like high school and college wrestling, where the promoter has his team. He has a starting lineup, backup, third team. 3 different teams. I feel like the governing bodies should partner up with the TV station and hold tournaments or dual meets based upon. So if you're on Paramount, you're with the WBO, or Sky. If you're on Sky TV, it's WBO. If you're on TBS, you're with the WBC, and they should have their own tournaments throughout the year, or maybe one year they have a tournament, and then each time they alternate. You know what I'm saying? Each
and
year.
basically a Super Bowl network.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense as to but to get boxing out there, they don't use the technology as much. They don't use the amateur system like they used to. I've talked to numerous people in the amateur system trying to do a thing where I would even go to the event, I'd put it on for free, put it behind a paywall for like $1 because you're not. But the promoters are like, well, I don't want to stream it because it's free, and they're not showing up anyway. They're not coming. If your uncle in Alabama wants to see you fight in New York, they're not flying in for an amateur show. Exactly. But for $1.99, go ahead, watch it. So there's so many. I don't think we think outside the box enough, like a Dana White or like a what was his name, Bjorn, the guy who had Bellator.
Nah, you don't think like him. Don't think like him.
Scott Coker. Scott Coker.
But see, here's the thing, right? The thing is, like now with MMA, it's oversaturated. They're having a piracy problem too, because like the thing is, if you want people to really pay for fights, don't have every fight on pay-per-view. Have a few pay-per-views a year. Like when Canelo fight, people will tune in to watch Canelo fight because he fights twice a year. But have like a few fights, a big card like the Riyadh season. That card's worth paying for because it's stacked from top to bottom. It's an all-star cast on that card. You know, the roster is full, it's deep. I feel like if you have more of those and then have more shows more shows or cards on TV, you know, that can bleed to something else bigger, because then you're seeing guys that are recognizable on TV over and over again. You're seeing them do big things on TV. Their highlights are in the Sports Center and whatnot. And then after you get the little taste of what they can do, put them on a pay-per-view. Just don't like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Wasn't nobody asked for Frank Martin versus Tank? Nobody's asked for that. Nobody.
On X last night, and this was a Showtime Championship boxing card, and I was
like, and Tank said it. Tank was like, I want to think Showtime. Oops, I almost said Showtime. That's what it was.
Jeez.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I saw a few people saying this a couple years ago. This would have been a Showtime Championship boxing card.
Yeah, or HBO After Dark.
Yeah,
that's even worse. HBO After Dark start at midnight. Jeez, you know, those shows were. We can go back and forth, but let me ask you guys this. I'm going to give it to Percy. Percy first. I give you the keys to the kingdom of boxing. Okay, coming off this fight last night, and I thought it was a good show that I was looking forward to. I thought the roll of it was pretty good too. Started at 8 o'clock. You know, you can't have fights start at midnight. You know, it ended at 12. I mean, I believe me, I'm old enough that I was dozing off in the middle of some of the shows at 9, but still, I'm not waiting until the main event goes on till midnight. I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom. How do we sit there and get boxing to the forefront of the American public, and I don't think it'll ever go back to the 90s, those 90s were the golden era of boxing. How do we get it to move forward without sacrificing or losing so much ground that we're losing to the UFC and combat sports? I think they could all coexist, but we're losing a lot towards that. And no offense to Mo, I know Mo, you're a big MMA guy and a wrestling guy, and I love wrestling too. And here, Pennsylvania is massive wrestling area. Boxing needs something. Percy Crawford, how does boxing get something?
Loaded question, super loaded question, but the shot in the arm I think boxing could use is activity. I think when we see guys like a Gervonta Davis, who we see the impact he has on the sport, fighting it once in every 14 months, once a year, that's not enough. Gary Antoine Russell, who fought last night, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw Gary Antoine Russell. David Benavidez was probably the only active guy on the card who you've seen a couple times a year. So that's the first thing, name recognition. A lot of people who I know that are casual fans like, hey, Gervonta's fighting tonight. Who is this guy he's fighting? And it's just because the name recognition is not there, because Hell, Frank Martin hadn't fought in forever. You know, I know Errol Spencer's dealt with a lot, but him and Bud fought in July, and he's saying, I'll be back in November or December. That's a long time, man, to keep people engaged and keep people wondering. The last thing we know is Errol Spence got beat up badly. How do we get that taste out of him mouth if he's not fighting again for another year and a half? So I think getting guys active, if that entails, you know, smaller purses, I love to see fighters get paid. I'm not saying that. But you may have to go with the structure of fight 5 times a year to earn this amount of money, then 1 time to earn this amount of money. You may have to go to something like that, because I think that's the biggest thing, name structure. I remember having a conversation with, I don't think he'll mind if I put this out, Andre Ward. And Andre Ward and I was talking, and he said, Percy, if you had a company and it was a big brand and you had the opportunity to sponsor me or Steph Curry, who would you sponsor? And I was he was like, you're not going to offend me. I say Steph Curry. He said, you know why? Because you see him 50, 60 times a year on TV, because they play 82 games and 45, 50 of those games are televised. To where me, if you see me twice a year, I'm called an active fighter if I fight twice a year. So to me, activity is where it all starts. I think you can have your stars of boxing fighting once a year, once every 2 years in some cases. I look at a guy like Keith Thurman. You just can't have your biggest names on the sideline. So that's not an internal problem. That's more of an on-the-surface problem, but I think that's where it starts.
And that's a good segue. King Mo, here's the keys to the kingdom. What do you do to get boxing to where it's got to go?
Well, boxing needs to be on network television again. I feel like the promoters and the governing bodies need to sit down and figure out who will go to where during the time of the year. Like they could have one station geared towards PBC versus Top Rank, one station geared towards Matchroom versus whatever. You know, and they could divvy it up that way, and then every 6 months or every year switch, and every 4 years have a Super Bowl based upon the records. You know what I'm saying? Have them meet up and be like, you know, or every 2 years have the guys with the best records meet up and face each other, you know, in some type of playoff system or something. It should be like a modified tournament in a sense. 10 rounds, 8 rounds, whoever they have. Because I feel like network TV builds stars. Pay-per-view builds piracy. It builds streaming. You know, yep. Because look, nobody's going to buy all the pay-per-views. Even with the UFC. Even with the UFC being as known as it is, they're having the piracy problem too, because they're having pay-per-views 3 or 4 times a month.
And I'm talking $60-$70 a pop, man. It ain't the $29-$30 it used to be.
No. So I mean, network TV, the promoters got to sit down and be willing to co-promote, and then the governing bodies need to sit down with the networks and say, hey, you know what? Here's what we have to offer. We need some slots. Let's make something happen. Let's do these dual meets, like the 5 versus 5 or the 7 versus, like, you know, whatever they want to do, and just go about that route.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I get so much blowback from this, and I come from a position of how to make it improve. In my business, I don't look at it as how I look at it as how my business can improve, but to take care of my people. So I'm looking at it this way. So what I say, don't take out of context. There's too much money being thrown around to one person at the top. $35 million for a fight for one guy is too much. It doesn't make you hungry to say, I want to fight this guy. Look at the problem we're having with Canelo. I don't want to fight. I got all the money in the world. If you make your investments and you're good. Now, on the flip side, $4,000 for a 4-round fight, I say, okay, that's okay. But, you know, you got to get in the 10 range. 10,000 is good. It used to be 100 a round back when I was with guys. I think the money is too loose. And now you got a problem to rein it in. It's similar to what you do when, you know, everyone got this COVID money. It's thrown out there. Now you got to rein this shit in. It's like, oh man, I got a car payment. I got this because you were getting all this money. And now you don't. And now the economy's starting to shrink a little bit. It's going to retract a little bit to the point where we're going to have to cut interest rates. At some point, you got to rein it in. I'm not saying I'm all for people making their money. I'm all for it. But I think they should also help them in the promotion side, the promoter side, promote your guy. Promote your guy. Put him on all your TV shows. Put him in front of the media. Put him in front of brands that want to sponsor him. That makes sense. The liquor brands, the colognes, everything. Do that. That'll help you in the end. If I have my girls here make all these nice little platters up for bagel baskets and do whatever, and people see that, they're going to sell it. Eventually, at the end, their product is making me money. You have to put it out there more and maybe take a little bit less. And that goes for also the promoters too. Put some money behind their name, and I think you'll do a lot better. I really think it comes down to a money issue. You're losing money with piracy. The prices are way too high, at $79, which I don't even think I would touch a $79 one. I just buy it for the year. But then again, I got to buy another $79 program. You're out of your mind.
That's crazy. What's the point of having Amazon Prime if everything doesn't come with it and I still got to shove out $75? The structure is damaged. There's a lot of things. I think what you, George, and what Mo said makes a lot of sense. I just think it's so many hands in the pot. And you're right. Cards are so top heavy from a money standpoint that you have guys literally almost fighting for nothing on the undercard. And I think those days should be over. And I think that's what I mean when I say, man, look, make them fight 5 times a year to make this amount of money as opposed to once, and then we won't see them again until they're ready to be seen.
Now, Mo, you probably have a better track record with this. Is it possible to fight that many times a year?
12 rounds? I don't know. 10 rounds? I don't know. Maybe 8 and 6, quite possibly, but like depending on who your opponents are, because if you're fighting like guys like Matias and guys that like Zapata, I can see them fighting 5 times a year. Like they're very hittable. Guys like Shakur, I could, because he's very defensively minded, but at the same time, I don't think people want to see Shakur fight 5 times a year. The first 3 fights, he'd be on fire. The last 2, he'd be playing it so safe that, it might be the diminishing returns because the last few fights might be boring.
But I don't mean to cut you off, George, but I think we're not seeing guys as sharp as we can see them because of that, though. Yeah. I think if you're doing your craft 1 or 2 times a year, we're seeing these lackluster performances because they can't be as sharp as they can be. And maybe 5 is excessive, but I see prospects fight 2 times a year. Like, it's crazy that where's Keyshawn Davis? Where's, there's so many prospects that we're seeing like 1 or 2 times a year as if they're top bill guys. It's crazy to me, man. I couldn't understand getting into a sport and being content with fighting twice a year.
But that's because a lot of those prospects, I think they're stars already. They're calling out like look, for instance, David Morrell. I'm not too big on him. He's winning, but like he doesn't fight that much, and he wants to fight the biggest names. But the biggest name he's beaten is Sina Ekbeko, who's a 160 pounder. So I mean, like some of these guys, like they want the biggest names, but the biggest names will not come until you've earned the right to face those big names.
The social media era, man. They definitely think they're stars. 50,000 followers, and you're a superstar.
No, and again, half of them are bought. They do have a lot of guys that buy their people.
Oh, absolutely.
Mo, let me ask you this on your end here when you're talking about. I was, following your career, towards the end there, the injuries that were piling up there. You had your hip. Yeah. You had I mean, is it possible that the injuries have piled up on some of these guys that they just don't want to do the 3-4 fights? They just want to have 1 a year and that's it.
Maybe the older guys.
Yeah.
Maybe the guys that are in their 30s, like mid-30s, 36. Mateus, I can see he's a little older, but like if you're in your 20s, I don't know. Unless you've been training reckless, I feel like if I were young again, I'd do the same thing over again. I'd fight as many times as possible. But then as you get older, you're more selective with your fights because you've earned the right to be selective. Mm-hmm. So like that's why Canelo has earned the right to be selective for these fights. He's fought everybody. He's had over 50 fights? Almost 60.
He's got 60 some, 70.
Yeah. So I mean, Canelo fights twice a year. Go ahead. But there are guys like Morrell. He's 7-0, 8-0, 9-0. He's fought once. He fights once a year, if that. Like he should fight more because he wants to fight all these big names. Okay, earn that right by beating everyone else. Yeah, fight Canelo. Yeah, I want to fight Canelo too. Everyone does. But at the same time, you have to beat. It's easy to fight number 1, but it's hard to beat 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on.
Absolutely.
Right. One last topic here I want to touch on before we wrap up here. And guys, again, thank you for coming on Father's Day. You come in boxing and bagels. That's unbelievable that I get to get two guys like you on the show. Something that popped out over the week, a business type. Leonard Ellerby steps down, the CEO of Mayweather Promotions. I don't know. I'd heard that this was brewing for a while, and it wasn't a good separation. Do you guys have any insight on what's happening with that?
Got fired.
Yeah, I don't have insight. I have speculation that
Okay.
revolved around. If you're paying attention, you can kind of tell. To me, it looked like Ellaby. I don't even know if I would say he was given an ultimatum. It seems like he was very involved in the Tank Frank promotion, and it cost him his job. I mean, that's it in a nutshell to me. I'm not saying Floyd went to him and said it's either Tank or me. But obviously, Tank and Floyd have their issues. Leonard Ellerby seems to be on the side of, if not Tank, just the side of business. Man, I got a fight to promote. And Floyd is Floyd, and I think he was fired. Because why else would you put up this nice departing letter for Leonard Ellerby while posting a picture with you and Richard Schaefer? Like, you couldn't even give Leonard Ellerby the common courtesy of posting a picture with him. Saying bye, but look, here's your replacement. So it seems like a firing to me.
Mo?
Well, I think he wanted to boss up, make a bigger move because Espinosa is that dude. Worked at Showtime. He was an advisor for John Jones. He worked at Golden Boy at one point. He knows boxing. He knows combat sports. Ellerby, on the other hand, I don't know what he knows. Like if you think about Ellerby in the past, he was like just a. I heard stories about him. Yeah, I heard a bad guy. Like, he used to carry people's clothes and bags and stuff like that. And worked his way up seriously, and he worked his way up to bigger position. But what has he done in the sport? Now, Richard Schaefer's done a lot. I mean, not Richard Espinosa. Espinosa, my bad. I said Richard Schaefer. Espinosa's done a lot. Espinosa was with Showtime. He's with a lot of people. So I think that he made a business move because now with the money team being depleted, maybe. Espinosa can build it back up.
Oh, you're talking about Schaefer. Schaefer's got Richard Schaefer came in.
No,
yeah, Schaefer came in.
Okay, then my bad. That's Espinosa.
Espinosa was Espinosa's with Showtime, but he's kind of with Amazon now.
Okay, then he got Schaefer, and then definitely my bad. Schaefer. You got Schaefer, and that's a big. He bossed up because Schaefer, he knows boxing. He's been with everybody. Ellerby, if you think about this, Percy, now 7-8 years ago when they asked Ellerby a question, how would he answer it? Think about it. He didn't know anything.
Floyd said. He'd say Floyd said.
now Schaefer, on the other hand, has been in with the who's who. He's dealt with the who's who. He's a respected name. He has power. He can rebuild the money team because right now the money team is Floyd and Carmel, and that's it. From what I see.
Yeah, they just saw Jaleel Hackett. I think Mayweather Promotions is pretty much a done thing. Whatever contributions Richard Schaefer can make, Floyd to take them, but that's a sinking ship. I think Leonard Ellerby, as you alluded to, George, has probably been bad for quite some time.
Yeah.
Kind of tolerated it, but I think with this Tank and Floyd thing coming to a head, Ellerby just like, man, I'm good on this. Like, he's been in the sport forever. He's probably made his money. And why be in the middle of mess when you could just kind of step aside? So I don't think he was actually given an opportunity to step aside. I think he was fired. I just think it made him being let go probably that much easier for him, seeing that it was a sinking ship.
And to have it on the week of the Tank fight, ooh, that's
deliberate.
Ooh.
Well, look, when Tank said, when Spence said, you don't like Floyd, or he said, you don't like your promoter, he's like, I like Ellerby, I don't like Floyd. Tank said that loud and direct, and it, people heard that. There are clips about it.
Yeah. There's a personal issue with Tank and Floyd. I'm pretty sure. Well, you guys know what happened there. There was something very private that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed too. So, So I think we're going to end it on that note there, so I don't get canceled right there. But either way, guys, it's always good to have you. King Mo, thanks for joining us for the first time. How can I get a hold of you at social media?
At King Mo FH on Instagram. I only use X or Twitter, so if you hit me up on there, I can respond. But on Instagram, when I'm there, at King Mo FH.
I got you there. Percy, where do we get you at?
At Mr. Louisiana, with the second I in Louisiana being a 1. That's Instagram and Twitter. I sporadically use both, and I'm on Facebook at Percy Crawford. I'm on there a lot too.
Well, you certainly have a lot coming in, Percy. You got some good big stuff coming up in the next couple weeks that you're going to be dropping on our show here. That's what I'm hearing. Just what I heard.
Absolutely.
Not sure. King Mo, hopefully you could be a regular here. It's great talking to you.
I'm down, man. This is a great conversation.
This is good
great
stuff.
Conversation.
As always, guys, Boxing and Bagels every Sunday. Be sure to join us next week. Who knows what we'll have? We could, after the big fights, we definitely hear, but we never know who we could have on. Percy Crawford, King Mo, your Highness. Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right, my man. Y'all have a good Father's Day.
Hey, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.